I'm Masequa Myers, filmmaker, teacher, director, and youth mentor and actress, and you're watching Empowering Voices.
Every day is a point of her story and his story. And today for Empowering Voices, we are overjoyed, literally, I am personally, because we have the opportunity to welcome to our Empowering Voices community for the very first time, Masequa Myers, noted filmmaker, director, actor, and youth mentor. Welcome to Empowering Voices.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
First and foremost, this is a celebration of March, which is Women's History Month, but I like to say that her story, the women's story, is a part of history. It is history every single day. And what I'd like for you to talk about first is your work as a filmmaker. How is it that you, an African-American woman, can I say born in Chicago?
Well, actually, I was born in Birmingham, Alabama, and was raised in Chicago. My family came here, my dad, mom, grandmother, and two brothers back in 1956. So I always say that I have a southern and city upbringing, and I think I have best of both worlds.
So how does one find herself whose ancestry involves the continent of Africa, slaves in the southern part of North America, Alabama, and moving to Chicago, and today one of your talents is filmmaker. How did that happen?
Oh, it's been a wonderful journey to get to this point for sure. And I think we get to this point, I say we, because all of us who have accomplished things or have a purpose, we owe that to the strength of our ancestry and our African ancestry, because we know how much has been sacrificed for us to be here today. I became a filmmaker out of an evolution of being an artist, period. I began way back as a young person who was put into a couple of plays and fashion shows. And I'm to understand, and I do remember this, at the age of 8, I was more concerned with the entire show, its running of it, its timing of it, as opposed to how I looked walking out on the runway. I'm going, oh, please hurry up. I'm going to be late. There's going to be a space in the show that shouldn't be there. That's at 8 years of age. But didn't know that that's where I would wind up in terms of being a filmmaker, making sure that the entire production is spoken for. I produced my first play in church. I was attending Park Manor Christian Church on the south side of Chicago, and I was about 13 years of age. Didn't know that's what I was doing then. And I pulled together youth members of the church. We were at a camp, and we produced a play about slavery, actually. And so I created the auction block and all of that, and from there went on to study acting at Kennedy King College and in the community, the professional community of Chicago. And after moving from Chicago to Phoenix and Los Angeles, California, it really just came out of my need to be in control of images of black people. And once you are a producer, director, filmmaker, then what you think is important can get done because it is coming from you and you're creating that project. I hope that's all making sense.
Oh, it is making sense. This is a perfect segue for you to share with us more about the ever-evolving, if you will, project, DuSable Digital Project.
Okay, I am so pleased to be at the helm of this educational initiative that is spearheaded by the DuSable Museum of African American History. It is a vision of Dr. Carol Adams, who is the president and CEO of the DuSable Museum of African American History, and it is being spearheaded and supervised by the Director of Education, Paimon Rami, who is, his total title is Director of Educational Services and Public Programs. The DuSable Museum is involved with making sure that the history of the African American, of those people of African descent across the diaspora, is told. And the state of Illinois has a mandate in teaching African American studies. And with that in mind, Discovering DuSable Digitally was born. It is a project where young people, middle school, high school students, can learn the story of the father of Chicago by the name of Jean-Baptiste Point DuSable. We do not want to disrespect the Native Americans that were here prior to Columbus, prior to the colonization of this country. So we don't say that Jean-Baptiste Point DuSable discovered Chicago. We said that because he set up so much business here and started so much trade here that we have adopted him as the father of Chicago. And this particular project is a combination of educational modules, fantastic graphics, all on a website where you can access at any time, and inclusive of short films, short documentaries, and what they do is help the teacher get a sense of how to teach this African American story of this great man who was a negotiator at the time when a black man walking down the street, not a lot different than presently, but at that time we were enslaved by chains, and he had to navigate Louisiana. As a black man, he had to negotiate and live among the Native Americans here, the French, the Spaniards, and all of that is told digitally within this website.
Now, walk us through what we're looking at now in terms of what are we seeing, what are we witnessing, and why is the physical, geographical environment, why is this seen in nature so important?
Sure. What is being seen now is what the Africans saw when they were brought from either Africa straight to Louisiana or Africa through Haiti into Louisiana. And that's the route that Jean-Baptiste Point DuSable had to travel. His mother was from Africa, from the Congo, and she was an enslaved African brought to Haiti. And in Haiti is where Jean-Baptiste Point DuSable was born, and his father was of French heritage. And what we would like to point out in this clip is the fact that this was a very different place than what most Haitians or what most Africans were familiar with on the west coast of Africa. Now, we do know through research that there are swamps in Africa, but they're not that many, and they weren't on the west coast where so many Africans were taken from and brought to the Americas. And so what we're saying is, do you understand the kind of strength and adaptation that Africans had to do to survive, to make this new, strange place a place where they wouldn't lose their life, but try to sustain it and try to get back home if at all possible, but if not, to make the best of what they had at the time.
Aside from, I know education is just a consistency, if you will, a consistent will for the DuSable, but within the context of the DuSable digital project, how important is education for not just Chicago, but for the world?
Well, it's invaluable. Education is invaluable. And I have dedicated my entire life, by choice, to combine art and education, because art takes the education to another level. You can educate, and it's an intellectual process. It's a brain process. But then you can add that art, which is that creativity. Then it becomes more visceral. Then it's something that people feel. And people, when they feel something, it really has a deeper impact than just thinking about it. So to combine those two things, arts and education, has been my life's work. And it's been my life's work that the art and education that I combine is one that uplifts and creates a connection to an African culture. We as black people, unfortunately, were stripped of our connection to our culture. So we're not like other immigrants who, and I'm saying that because I'm not saying we're immigrants, and I don't want to speak for anyone else. But we'll say people who came from other places to this country, they came here with their culture intact, their customs, their traditions, their way of praying, their way of worshiping. We did not. And because of that, I personally feel that's why we're so scattered and frustrated. And if we understood that we had an ancient thousands and thousands and thousands of year old ways of doing things, and people who have accomplished astronomical accomplishments, we would have another sense of settlement. We'll have another sense of pride. We will be able to walk through life with a greater purpose. And I hope I answered that question. Education is so important because it empowers you, it gives you direction, and it gives you focus.
Within the context of, yes, you did answer the question, and within the context of we're celebrating Women's History Month in the month of March. And on this day, why do you find it inspiring? Perhaps is it your call to be, if I'm not intruding upon your personal space too much, but is it a part of your call to be a filmmaker, to help educate, and if so, why? And then just share with us the empowerment of filmmaking.
I don't know if it's my calling. Maybe it is. Maybe it's me taking advantage of opportunity. And I will say this, that again, as an independent filmmaker, I was also doing a lot of producing and directing in theater. When you are not having to answer to someone else about what you want to do with your life in a direct manner, then you can create the type of stories and the kind of stories that you deem important. And no matter what I would be doing at this time, I'm a people-oriented person. So I don't find myself, and I don't see myself sitting behind desks and just interacting with machines or numbers or that kind of thing. Whatever I was going to do with my life, it would have to be people-oriented, and it would have to be something that touched people in a very deep way, which is what I was saying, touch people's hearts, touch people in terms of being a conduit to help them to accomplish what they're trying to do. That's where I work the best. And filmmaking is all of that. It's inspirational because you feel it, you see it, you intellectualize it. So I think that because I am in the entertainment business, that the top of the line to me is filmmaking. I mean, there's storytelling, there's acting, there's stage, there's animation, all of that. But when you can recreate history, when you can recreate the smells, the feel of a certain time, then that impact is much greater than just reading it. So filmmaking became my calling.
With the fact that you are a filmmaker, you are a woman, you are a woman of African descent. Talk to us about the importance of culture, preserving, teaching, and sharing our culture from Africa, as well as from being African Americans on the continent of North America?
Well, that's a loaded question, and let me answer it in this way. I am proud to be female, woman. I am so proud to be of African descent, and the reason being is because as a woman, I have been able to give birth to generations behind me to come, and I'm really talking plurally too and not just singularly. And in understanding that and understanding the ancient customs of Africa, it was really respected, and it is respected, the ability of females to give birth, the ability of females to nurture. I accept all of that proudly. And by being a proud African woman, then I hope that I exemplify that. I exemplify the pride, and that is passed on to other women. Contemporarily now, I have found that too many women are confused about, I'm getting in trouble here, but I'm going to say it anyway.
That's okay. We like to agitate to cause people to critically think. You're in good company.
Are confused about roles. Just because you're intelligent, independent, have ideas, does not negate the fact that you are a female and you bear children. And too many of our young women, because they're disconnected to their roles, and they think that making money is what the most important thing is in this world now, that they are mixing the roles. They want the men to stay home. They want the men to be there at 6 weeks of age, and I guess they would want them to breastfeed if they could. But my point is, it is obvious that we have different roles that complement each other. If we understood our different roles, then we could complement each other instead of fighting with each other so much. Yeah.
And would you expound more upon about the gift of birthing, whether is that just limited to birthing a child?
Well, I was only talking about birthing a child at that point, but birthing is bringing forth newness. And I believe that's what you're alluding to in terms of me to expound on that. And I do it all the time then. I have 2 biological sons that I actually bore, but then I'm constantly birthing new ideas and new ways of telling old ideas. So yes, we could use birthing not just in childbirth, but in the birth of new ideas and projects.
And with regards to new ideas, what do you see, if you will, that can be done using film to share new life, to share history with so many of our young people, and so many adults are lost, if you will, because they don't know where they come from, or because they've just encountered so many harsh obstacles in life. Does filmmaking help to be therapeutic as well as liberating?
I would say so. I'm sure that people look at film and they find answers that they might not have known prior to looking at the film. I have this project called 19 in a Day that I have recently completed. It's a documentary about the violence in Pilsen neighborhood in Chicago, and it's predominantly a Mexican neighborhood. And I'm bringing that up because as a filmmaker and as a woman, I had a different take, and I'm going to say that because the men that I worked with, while we were sitting in a development meeting about this project, and also the father of the young man who was killed, their idea in making this movie was to reenact the actual violence that took place when the young man was shot. So he was shot in the head, and they wanted to show the blood and the gore and the actual and I really wanted to go another route. And my route was this, talking about birthing new ideas and controlling images and wanting people to to take in this concept of violence in another way. I wanted to show the love of the parents. I wanted to show the love of the community. I wanted to show the relationship that the parents had with their child and what saved them after the violent attack, and not just focus in on the violent attack. And so it was groundbreaking to approach the gang violence from this point of view, and very effective, because too often we concentrate on the ill, the negative, and not the positive that embraces and dissipates the pain and the negativity.
We could stay here and talk with you forever. I hope that you will allow us to invite you to come back again and talk with us as a community. But we always, as we end this conversation, we end our conversation the same way for all of our guests. Empowering voices, uplifting the voice of the voiceless. That is the intentional name of our podcast, because we would like to have persons to come and speak with us about the voiceless, those voiceless voices that unfortunately are not heard every day because of person's social location. As a filmmaker, as a director, as an actor, as a youth mentor, would you talk about the meaning of empowerment?
I will. I want to say, first of all, that I certainly appreciate being invited to be a part of this Empowering Voices session. And I am so thrilled and continue to be thrilled with what Trinity United Church of Christ is about and its connection to our African culture. And I would say, unfortunately, in America, Black people in general are voiceless. If we think about the media, I'm talking about major media now, we're not voiceless because we have people like me, we have people like you, and we have a lot of our grassroots that are not succumbing to only the major media in terms of who we are and what we have to say. But in terms of being saturated with our voice, or our voice being as important as it should be, it does not happen. So I would like to think that I am empowering youth because that's the age when they're looking for answers. I would like to think that I'm empowering women because it's important that our importance of what we're trying to say is heard. I would think that I'm empowering Black people in general. And anytime that we think that we have something to say, it can be said through filmmaking, it can be said through our worship, it can be said through our art as painters, as dancers, and as intellectuals. I really feel that communication, period, our ability to talk with one another is extremely important, and that's the beginning of empowering. Listening, communicating, educating ourselves, and having an outlet for ourselves and our words to be heard.